Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our weekly trainings from Africa Fire Mission. We're very thankful you took the time out of your schedule to come and join us for today's training. Today, we've got a very good instructor with us. We've got Frank Giovanelli with us. He's going to be talking about effective communications. Just want to remind everyone throughout the training, we've got you on mute, and we're going to keep you muted unless the instructor wants to interact with you. Feel free to jump in the chat, introduce yourselves, and where you're from. We're going to get started first here with a word of encouragement from Jose, our fire safety advocate for AFM. And then when we complete our training, we're going to swing back over to Jose, invite you guys to stick around for tea time afterwards. Jose, take it away.
Thank you very much, sir, Chief Mike. Thank you very much also, Chief Frank Gio. Really happy to have you back. Happy New Year, everybody across Africa. This is a new year, 2023. And I was just thinking this morning when I woke up, what will I be encouraging my brothers and sisters today? And I just felt about, it went back to my basics, like what are your values? You know, you as a person, you as Adelino, you as Ellie, you as Dennis, you as Issa, you as Wambiri, what are your values? You know, for me, I really value having integrity, being honest, and also respecting whoever I interact with. So I would want to encourage you as a person to go back to your basics. So that is what is going to govern you as a person throughout the year. You know, once you get to understand what governs you and what moves you, you can be able now to say, hey, these are the things that I have to check in with myself before I can forge ahead in my goals and everything else. So this year, purpose to have values if you do not have, purpose to tell yourself, hey, as Jose, I choose to have integrity. Without integrity, if I'm interacting with anybody who doesn't have integrity, that's a no-no for me, you know? And then if you love being honest, what does honesty entail as a person? So all that as honesty, you get to take that on your back throughout the year. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you can stay on for the lessons, the whole time of the lesson, and also I invite you for tea time from 4 going onwards. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chief Mike.
Thanks, Jose. We always like to hear your words and encouraging your brothers there. If everyone has a little bit of extra time and sticks around right at the beginning of tea time, we're going to discuss something new here at AFM for this year. We have a Google Classroom set up, and I'll put some information in the chat about that. If you attend at least 70% of today's presentation live here on Zoom, you'll receive a certificate of attendance. And then we have the Zoom Google Classroom set up that you'll be able to get some other firefighters that weren't able to attend the class to go there, watch the video. You'll write a quick summary about what you learned from the class, and we'll issue a certificate of attendance there as well. So stand by. We're going to get into that when tea time gets started. For now, if you're ready, Frank, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk to us today about effective communication.
Hello, my name is Frank Giovanelli, and welcome to today's training, Effective Communication Skills. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself as it pertains to today's training. I've served over 30 years in the fire service, and during that time, I've spent a number of years as a public information officer. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with what a public information officer does, I'll explain. Public information officer is designated with the task of getting out information to the public. That information could be from an incident that you responded to. It could be a weather event, an upcoming event at the fire department, a public safety message. It could be a variety of things. Whatever that information is, it's that person's task to get it out to the public. And they do this through a variety of ways. They do it through telephone, radio, and television interviews. They do it through written press releases, public service announcements, as well as appearing at various public events and addressing the public. Now, as public information officer, I participated in a number of telephone, radio, and television interviews. I've also written a number of press releases, which appeared in the local as well as national newspapers. Now, there's one that I'm particularly proud of. It's an article, or more of a story, that appeared in the New York Times. And you can Google it. Google New York Times, My First Fire. You'll see a page with my picture and my name on it. And everything on that page was written by me and published by the reporter. But enough about me. Let's move on with our presentation. Who is this class for? Is it for fire chiefs? Fire officers? Firefighters? Actually, it's for everyone. It's for those in the fire service, police, dispatchers, EMS personnel, Red Cross. It's for anyone who would like to improve their communication skills. Effective communications is very important. In fact, I would be willing to make the argument that having the skills to effectively communicate are just as important as having the skills needed to put out a fire. Now you're probably thinking, who is this crazy guy? Doesn't he know that words don't put out a fire, water does? Well, you're right. But effective communication saves lives. And let me explain how. A resident in your community calls a dispatch, calls your emergency number, and tells the dispatcher, I have an emergency at 123 Main Street. Was that communication effective? Absolutely not. The dispatcher doesn't know whether they need to dispatch the police, the fire, or EMS. The call should have gone something like this. I have an emergency. I live at 123 Main Street. My house is on fire. Everybody's out except for my baby, who's trapped in the second-story bedroom. Now, the dispatcher has plenty of information to give to the fire department. And they dispatch out the fire department. Fire department, you're going to 123 Main Street for the house fire. Was that communication very effective? I mean, you know where you're going. You have the address. You know you're going to a house fire. So tactically, you could start planning how what you're going to do. But a vital piece of information has been left out. And that's everybody's out of the building. And my baby is trapped in the second-story bedroom. Having that piece of information, doesn't that kind of change how you do things from a tactical standpoint? Now let me give you one last example. You're on the engine company and you're dispatched to a three-story apartment building for an apartment fire. You pull up and the incident commander tells you, I want you to go to the roof and check for, fire conditions. Now, having just been to that building not that long ago on a fire inspection, you know that there's stairs, interior stairs that go up to the roof, and that's the quickest and easiest way to get there. So you take your crew and you go up the stairs, you go to the roof like the incident commander told you to. You start walking around, sounding the roof and looking for fire extension. Well, all of a sudden, conditions change. The structural integrity of the roof is now degraded. It starts to collapse. You can no longer get to the stairs. And in the process, you lose 2 firefighters. What the incident commander meant to say was, engine company, I want you to ladder the building go to the roof, and check for fire conditions. By not communicating 3 simple words, ladder, the, building, you put the lives of 2 firefighters in jeopardy. And they now either got seriously injured or died because they fell through the roof. They had no way to get off. By throwing that ladder, you would have had a means of egress, and those lives could have been saved. So I think we can all agree that communication is important. However, more importantly than communications is effective communications. Albert Einstein said it best: mere communication does not serve any purpose if it is not effective and clear. This video is a good example of non-effective communication.
Hello. Well, how much are they asking?
Well, that's a lot of money for a deck.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but you're getting robbed. Did you hear me? You're getting robbed.
Ow! Stop!
AmeriQuest, an open-minded, equal opportunity lender.
Before we dive deeper into today's training, I would like to ask all of you 3 questions. Now, if any of these 3 questions pertain to you, I would ask for you to be honest, don't be bashful, and raise your hand. And here's my first question. Have any of you felt like you were held hostage in a conversation before? Now for the second question. Have any of you been part of a conversation where you know that the person talking could have said what they needed to say much faster using fewer words? Now for my third and final question. This will be a true test to see how honest of an audience you are. So if this question pertains to you, be true to yourself and raise your hand. How many of you have been the person in a conversation talking much longer than you needed to be? I know my hand is raised. Communication is defined as the exchange of thoughts, messages, or information through speech, signals, writing, or behavior. And effective communication occurs when the process of communication is received efficiently without the intended meaning being distorted or changed. Now, communication can be broken down into 2 different types: verbal and nonverbal. So verbal communication is defined as the use of oral or spoken language to convey information. It is also the use of written language and sign language to convey information. Now, what I found interesting is that written communication is part of verbal communication. You would think that would fall under nonverbal. But the reason why written communication falls under verbal communication is because it's related to the spoken word. And what I mean by that is, if I ask you to go into the kitchen and get me a glass of water, I'm speaking that request. But if I pass you a note asking you to go into the kitchen and get me a glass of water, that note is a reflection of my spoken word. Now, nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is the exchange of information without using the spoken or written word. Now, some examples of those are facial expressions, body language and posture, gestures, eye contact, touch, physical space. What we mean by physical space is how close you are to somebody or how far you are from them when communicating, and your tone of voice. So this slide shows that we communicate a good percentage of our time without even knowing it, non-verbally. And we do this through our facial expressions, tone of voice, body movement, appearance. We've all heard the saying, first impressions count. For those of us who have conducted interviews or have been in meetings with people, before we even say anything, we notice how they're dressed. Eye contact, gestures, arms crossed, arms open. Our posture, do we look confident in our posture? Do we look insecure? So 65% of our communication is nonverbal, and 35% is verbal or through spoken word. What are verbal communication skills? So some examples of effective verbal communication skills include active listening. In a previous slide, we saw that we verbally communicate 35% of the time, and we non-verbally communicate 65% of the time. Now, when it comes to active listening, we want to use those same percentages. So 35% of the time should be spent talking, and 65% of our time should be spent listening. Now, with active listening, what we don't want to do is be thinking about our response while the other person is talking. We want to actively listen to what they have to say. Once they're done talking, we can take a brief pause, think about our response, and then reply. This next movie clip is from the movie Wayne's World, and it does a very good job in demonstrating what not to do when active listening.
All right, our special guest right now, Wayne Campbell, Garth Elgar, Wayne's World, Wayne's World. All right, talking about Wayne Stock. Very exciting, big event. Everybody's excited, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be a big concert at Adlai Stevenson Park.
Uh-huh.
It's just going to be a big party, you know. We got some great bands coming.
Uh-huh.
Like Aerosmith?
Uh-huh.
I just want to remind everybody that there's still plenty of tickets left.
Uh-huh.
But that's no reason to wait till the last minute.
Uh-huh.
Because it's just a chance for the city of Aurora
To do something.
Uh-huh.
fun
Uh-huh.
and to put the city on the map.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work.
Oh, well, work is hard.
You're not really listening to me, are you?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I could say anything right now, like, you're a complete tool.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't hear it.
Asking for clarification. If you don't understand something, it's okay to ask for clarification. And you do that by saying, I'm not sure I quite understand you. Can you explain that to me? Or I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Can you rephrase that? Or just to make sure that I understand what you're saying, is this what you meant? And you repeat it in your own words. By asking for clarification, it shows that you're engaged in the conversation, and it also shows that you've been actively listening. Asking open-ended questions. An open-ended question is one that requires a response other than a simple yes or no. For example, how are you doing today? By asking open-ended questions, it shows that you care about what the other person has to say. It's making sure that the other person is engaging in your conversation. And it shows that you're engaged in the conversation as well. Recognizing and responding to nonverbal cues. Whether you're speaking in front of a large audience or just having a conversation with one other person, it's important to recognize the nonverbal cues that they're communicating, such as, eye contact, facial expressions, their tone of voice, their posture and gestures, and respond accordingly. You can tell a lot by the look in a person's face or by their body language. As I said in the previous slide, it's very important to recognize and respond to those nonverbal cues. Read that body language. As we can see here in the upper right, we have the audience who appears to be very engaged. If we look at their faces, they all have a pleasant look. Some are smiling. The lady wearing the glasses, she has her hand on her chin. She's looking forward. She looks like she's, processing the information that the instructor or the speaker is communicating. That's the look we want in our audience. Now, the lady in the bottom left, a little different story. She looks very disengaged, bored, appears she doesn't want to be there. And if you start to see that in your audience, you need to respond accordingly. So, some of the things you could do are maybe change the tone of your voice, change the pace of the presentation. If it's an individual that looks disinterested, maybe, re-engage them by asking them a question, and getting them to participate in the conversation. Or maybe they just need a break. The average adult has an attention span of roughly 20 minutes. And if your audience starts to look disengaged, give them a break. Let them rest the brain. Let them get some tea or coffee. Let them kind of refresh a little bit for a few minutes and come back, so they'll be re-engaged and in the act of listening of what you have to say. The person on the bottom right looks a bit angry, maybe a bit frustrated. And if you're speaking to an individual or a group of individuals and you're getting that type of body language or nonverbal cue, you might need to explain yourself. So, and what I mean by that is I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. This is what I meant to say. And then reword it in such a way that maybe they can understand a little better and maybe is not so offensive to them. Speaking clearly and concisely. Whether you're addressing a large group of people, or maybe just a small group, or an individual, or maybe you're talking to people on the fireground, you want what it is you're saying to be easily understood. Speak at a volume that people can hear you. Don't mumble your words. Don't slur your words. Speak clearly, because you don't want your message to be misinterpreted or misunderstood. You want your message to be effectively communicated. Also, use terminology that your audience can understand. For example, if I'm speaking to a bunch of medical professionals, I could use medical terminology. But if I'm speaking to members of my community who have no medical background, those same medical terms, they're not going to understand. So use terminology or use words that they can understand easily. Also, don't use slang. Everybody has a different definition of what their slang is. And what I mean by that is this. Let me share a story with you. Early on in my career, I just got out of the fire academy. And, I knew where everything was on every piece of equipment in that firehouse. Well, we go to a call, and one of the old timers, one of the old firefighters, tells me, "Go get me the Bory bar." And I'm thinking to myself, Bory bar. Boy, that's one that I've never heard before. Where in the heck is the Bory bar? So I go back to the engine and I'm opening up compartments looking for the Bory bar, and I'm like, now I'm sweating in my boots, right? Because I just got out of the academy. I should know where everything is, and we're on a call, and I'm a bit embarrassed. I'm a bit scared. I'm like, what the heck is a Bory bar? So I go back over to him and I shake my head. He goes, "Where's the Bory bar?" I said, "I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're talking about." And he gets all mad and goes over to the rig and pulls off what he calls the Bori bar. Everybody else in the world calls it a pry bar. And that's what I learned in the academy, is that it's a pry bar. So make sure, you don't use slang, because the terms that you use or the slang that you use can be misunderstood. Using humor to engage your audience. The use of humor could be a bit risky, but when used correctly, it can be a very effective tool. When using humor, you want to make sure that you're recognizing the nonverbal cues of your audience. If you crack a joke and they don't laugh, maybe your joke wasn't funny. Maybe it was offensive. Or maybe the crowd you're addressing just doesn't have a sense of humor. You need to make sure that you read your body language. And if what you're receiving is positive, then maybe you can continue to use humor in your presentation. If you get more of a negative response, then maybe think twice about using it again. There's obviously a time and a place for humor. You're not going to use humor at a funeral. But when used correctly, it's a very effective tool. Humor could be used when addressing a large audience to make them feel more comfortable, to break the ice. It could be used to make what could potentially be a very awkward and uncomfortable situation a bit more lighthearted, to distract the attention away from what's going on. It could be used to engage or keeping your audience engaged. Humor could be used for a variety of things. But again, it must be used correctly for it to be effective. This video is of former President Barack Obama. He's at a press event addressing the media when he realizes that the notes he was going to use were not placed on his podium. Now, he takes what could have been a very embarrassing and awkward and long moment of silence while waiting for those notes, and he fills it in with a bit of humorous conversation. This is a very good example of where using humor would be appropriate.
And I want to thank everybody who's here. I think there's only one problem, and that is that my remarks are not sitting here. People, things by Friday afternoon, things get a little challenged. I'm going to answer a question at the end of the remarks, but I want to make sure that we get the remarks out. People. Oh, goodness. Oh, somebody's tripping. I mean, folks are sweating back there right now.
Why are verbal communication skills important? Well, verbal communication skills matter because they enable you to build a rapport with other people, which in turn creates more positive interactions and stronger work relationships. With these skills, you can convey a sense of confidence and ensure that your audience understands your message or expectations. Having the ability to communicate clearly will help you succeed in various work situations. The following 10 steps will help you improve your verbal communication skills. First is think before speaking. People often feel uncomfortable with silence, but pausing before answering a question can improve your response. Taking time to reflect allows you to organize your thoughts into a concise, clear statement. If you feel rushed to answer, that feeling will get reflected in how you respond, so your message may not come out as intended. Pauses convey a sense of thoughtfulness, so your audience will gain the impression that you considered the best response before speaking. And similarly, if the person you're speaking to pauses for a moment, don't feel the need to jump in and counter their silence. The person will appreciate that you gave them the time to contemplate their response, rather than interrupting their thought process. Not only does this show professionalism, but it also demonstrates your interest in hearing what they have to say. Number 2 is use concise language. Using fewer words when speaking not only makes your message easier to understand, but also gets your main points across to the audience sooner. Before speaking, ask yourself how you can present the information as clearly and in as few words as possible. Whether you're writing or speaking, avoid using complicated words and sentences or including irrelevant information. Taking these steps will ensure your audience clearly understands your primary points and can respond accordingly. This skill is especially beneficial when providing instructions or expectations, as your directness ensures there is little confusion. Number 3, understand your audience. To effectively communicate messages, you need to understand your audience and put yourself in their position. Not everyone has the same knowledge or background as you, so ensure you explain information in a manner easily understood by anyone, especially when discussing complex or technical topics. Now, for example, having a background in medicine, if I'm speaking to colleagues, I can use medical terms such as inferior, superior, supine, medial, lateral, and they know what I'm talking about. But when addressing the public who may not have a background in medicine, they're not going to have a clue of what I'm saying and therefore will lose interest. So instead of using medical terms such as supine, I would say lying flat on your back. And someone who has no medical background can easily understand that. So talking in this approach also ensures your audience stays interested because you provide only the most relevant information they want to hear. Number 4, be mindful of your tone. Your tone plays a crucial role in verbal communications, and how you use it can affect the way your audience engages with you. Combining a friendly and warm tone with a smile makes a positive impression. Meanwhile, speaking in a flat or monotone manner can make you appear uninterested. Also, try to vary your tone and use inflection to emphasize important points. You can also use the verbal modeling method, in which you try to copy the tone of another person. For example, during a conversation, speak softly when they speak softly. Or if they have excited energy, try to match that. People feel drawn to voices that sound like theirs. And this makes a helpful method of increasing engagement. Number 5, pay attention to your body language. Your body language can affect how you deliver messages, despite it being a nonverbal method of communication. Ways to convey confident body language include maintaining eye contact and having relaxed body language. You can also use gestures or facial expressions to emphasize points and grab the audience's attention or focus. Number 6, employ active listening. Listening is as essential as speaking during conversations because it demonstrates a genuine interest in the other speaker and guarantees you understand their needs. As a result, you will find it easier to build rapport and relationships. To apply active listening skills, give the other person your full attention to ensure you not only hear the words they say, but also the message they want to convey. When the other person feels heard, they feel more interested in reciprocating and hearing what you have to say. Now, some effective active listening techniques include avoid making judgments about or stereotyping others. Remove any potential distractions such as noisy setting. Focus on what the other person is saying rather than thinking about what you want to say next. Ask clarifying questions to ensure you fully understand the information or message. And wait until the other person finishes speaking before responding. Number 7, speak with confidence. Confidence is crucial because if you sound like you don't believe in what you're saying, neither will your audience. You want to establish that you have credibility or authority, which makes people trust you and feel more interested in listening to you. Number 8, show your authentic self. While you can gain inspiration from other communicators to improve your skills, always bring your honest self to interactions. People feel more drawn to speakers who seem genuine and act transparently. For example, if you don't have the answer to a question, it's okay to admit it. Your colleagues will respect your honesty. Number 9, practice your skills. Whether you have an important meeting coming up or public speaking engagement, or you just want to hone your verbal communication skills, it's important to practice. You can practice alone by speaking in front of a mirror or recording yourself doing a presentation or speech. When watching yourself, you can study your body language, eye contact, facial expressions, gestures. And when you record yourself, make sure you assess your voice and tone. Again, you can use these recordings to determine which areas you need to work on to speak more clearly and concisely. Number 10, gain feedback. You can also practice your verbal communication skills in more realistic settings, such as in front of friends, family, or coworkers. Not only will this help you feel more comfortable speaking in front of others, but it also allows you to gain feedback. If you have a speech, presentation, or training plan, perform it as you would in front of the actual audience and ask these friends or colleagues to judge your verbal and nonverbal communication abilities. Their insights will instruct you on what you already do well and where you need improvement. Seeking feedback does not strictly apply to practice situations. After you make a presentation or conduct a training, ask a trusted colleague or supervisor for their opinion on your performance. Asking a supervisor can provide added benefits as it shows them that you strive to develop yourself professionally. It's also beneficial to get feedback from your audience. This will gauge your progress or provide you with more opportunities for verbal communication development. Now that we're done talking about verbal communications, I'd like to show you a brief video. What we have here is a video of President Obama. He's at a dinner event, so it's a bit lighthearted. It is humorous, but it does a very good job in demonstrating a lot of the effective communication skills that we just spoke about. So while you're watching this video, I want you to try to identify some of the communication skills, verbal and nonverbal communication skills that we've touched before we go on to the next section of this training.
Anyway, as always, I want to close on a more serious note. You know, I often joke about tensions between me and the press, but honestly, what they say doesn't bother me. I understand we've got an adversarial system. I'm a mellow sort of guy. And that's why I invited Luther, my anger translator, to join me here tonight.
Hold on to your lily white butts.
In our fast-changing world, traditions like the White House Correspondents' Dinner are important.
I mean, really? What is this dinner? And why am I required to come to it? Jeb Bush, do you really want to do this?
Because despite our differences, we count on the press to shed light on the most important issues of the day.
And we can count on Fox News to terrify old white people with some nonsense. Sharia law is coming to Cleveland, run for the damn hills! Y'all's ridiculous.
We won't always see eye to eye,
Oh, and CNN, thank you so much for the wall-to-wall Ebola coverage. For 2 whole weeks, we were one step away from the Walking Dead. And then y'all got up and just moved on to the next thing. That was awesome. Oh, and by the way, just if you haven't noticed, you don't have Ebola.
But I still deeply appreciate the work that you do.
Y'all remember when I had that big old hole in the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, and then I plugged it? Remember that? Which Obama's Katrina was that one? Was that 19 or was it 20? Because I can't remember.
Protecting our democracy is more important than ever. For example, the Supreme Court ruled that the donor who gave Ted Cruz $6 million was just exercising free speech.
Yeah, it's the kind of speech like this. I just wasted $6 million.
And it's not just Republicans. Hillary will have to raise huge sums of money, too.
Oh, yeah. She gonna get that money. She gonna get all the money. Khaleesi is coming to Westeros. Watch out! Whoa!
The nonstop focus on billionaire donors creates real problems for our democracy.
And that's why we're running for a third term.
No, we're not.
We're not?
No.
Who the hell said that?
But we do need to stay focused on some big challenges, like climate change.
Hey, listen, y'all, if you haven't noticed, California is bone dry. It looked like a trailer for the new Mad Max movie up in there. Y'all think that Bradley Cooper came here because he wants to talk to Chuck Todd? He needed a glass of water. Come on.
The science is clear. The science is clear. 9 out of the 10 hottest years ever came in the last decade.
Now, I'm not a scientist, but I do know how to count to 10.
Rising seas, more violent storms.
You got mosquitoes, sweaty people on the train stinking it up. It's just nasty.
I mean, look at what's happening right now. Every serious scientist says we need to act. The Pentagon says it's a national security risk. Miami floods on a sunny day, and instead of doing anything about it, we've got elected officials throwing snowballs in the Senate.
Okay, Mr. I think I got it, bro.
It is crazy. What about our kids? What kind of stupid, short-sighted, irresponsible bull?
Whoa, hey!
What?
Okay, no, hey.
What?
All due respect, sir, you don't need an anger translator. You need counseling. So now I'm out of here, man. I ain't trying to get into all this.
Go. Luther, my anger translator, ladies and gentlemen.
Now that we've completed verbal communication, we're going to move on to nonverbal communication. Your facial expressions, gestures, posture, and tone of voice are powerful communication tools. While the key to success in both personal and professional relationships lies in your ability to communicate well, it's not the words that you use, but your nonverbal cues or body language that speak the loudest. Whether you're aware of it or not, when you interact with others, you're continuously giving and receiving wordless signals. All of your nonverbal behaviors, the gestures you make, your posture, your tone of voice, how much eye contact you make, all send strong messages. They can put people at ease, build trust, and draw others towards you. Or they can offend, confuse, or undermine the message that you're trying to communicate. These messages don't stop when you stop speaking. Even when you're silent, you're still communicating nonverbally. However, by improving how you understand and use nonverbal communication, you can express what you really mean, connect better with others, and build stronger, more rewarding relationships. Your nonverbal communication cues, the way you listen, look, move, and react, tell the person you're communicating with whether or not you care, if you're being truthful, and how well you're listening. When your nonverbal signals match up with the words you're saying, they increase trust, clarity, and rapport. When they don't, they can generate tension, mistrust, and confusion. If you want to become a better communicator, it's important to become more sensitive, not only to the body language and nonverbal cues of others, but also your own. Now, nonverbal communication can play 5 roles. The first being repetition. It repeats and often strengthens the message you're making verbally. So if I'm verbally communicating that I'm angry, and I have a look of anger on my face, it kind of strengthens or repeats what I'm saying. Or if I have a look of happiness and joy on my face, and I'm telling you how excited I am, it repeats or reinforces that. The next is contradiction. It can contradict the message you're trying to convey, thus indicating to your listener that you may not be telling the truth. An example of that would be the words that are coming out of my mouth are no, but my head is shaking yes. My verbal response is contradicting my nonverbal response. And often people believe the nonverbal response because it's more genuine. Substitution. It can substitute for a verbal message. For example, your facial expression often communicates a far more clear message than words ever can. Have you ever walked into a room and you saw somebody sitting there with a look of exhaustion on their face? They just looked very tired. Well, they didn't have to verbally tell you that they were tired. You could tell by the expression on their face. Or walking down the street and somebody passes you with a big smile on their face, they look very happy. They're communicating that they're happy, but they didn't have to tell you verbally. Or someone walking by you and they have that look of anger on their face, maybe a clenched fist, an angry look on their face. You could tell in their eyes. They don't have to verbally say anything. It's their body language, their nonverbal communication is communicating that message to you. Complimenting. It may add to or complement your verbal message. For example, as a boss, if you pat an employee on the back in addition to giving praise, it can increase the impact of your message. Accenting. It may accent or underline a verbal message. So an example, you're speaking to an employee about backing up without a spotter. And as you're telling him, you cannot back up without a spotter, you're going to get somebody hurt. You're pounding your fist on the desk, and it's underlining the importance of your message. Or if you're standing at a dry erase board and you're pointing and touching the erase board next to the sentence that you're verbally communicating. You're accenting or you're stressing the importance or underlining the importance of that message you're trying to communicate. Early on in the presentation, we briefly discussed the various types of nonverbal communication. Well, now we're going to dive into those a little deeper and give you examples of each. The first is facial expressions. The human face is extremely expressive and able to convey countless emotions without saying a word. And unlike some forms of nonverbal communication, facial expressions are universal. The facial expressions for anger, disgust, fearful, happiness, and sadness are the same across all cultures. Body movement and posture. Consider how your perceptions of people are affected by the way they sit, walk, stand, or hold their head. The way you move and the way you carry yourself communicates a wealth of information to the world. This type of nonverbal communication includes your posture, bearing, stance, and subtle movements you make. An example, we can see here the person on the left has a closed posture, which can indicate hostility, unfriendliness, anxiety. You're less likely to approach that person than you are the person on the right, who has more of an open posture, which indicates friendliness, openness, and willingness. Gestures. Gestures are woven into the fabric of our daily lives. You may wave, point, or use your hands when arguing or speaking, often expressing yourself with gestures without even thinking. However, the meaning of some gestures can be very different across cultures. While the OK sign, for example, usually conveys a positive message in English-speaking countries, yet it's considered offensive in countries such as Germany, Russia, and Brazil. So it's really important to be careful of how you use gestures to avoid misinterpretation or miscommunication. Eye contact. Since the visual sense is dominant for most people, eye contact is an especially important type of nonverbal communication. The way you look at someone can communicate many things, including interest, affection, hostility, or attraction. Eye contact is also important in maintaining the flow of conversation and for gauging the other person's interest and response. Touch. We communicate a great deal through touch. Think about the very different messages given by a weak handshake, a warm hug, an offensive or sarcastic pat on the head, or a controlling grip on the arm, for example. Space. Have you ever felt uncomfortable during a conversation because the other person was standing too close and invading your personal space? We all have a need for physical space, although that need differs depending on the culture, the situation, and the closeness of the relationship. You can use physical space to communicate many different nonverbal messages, including signals of intimacy and affection, aggression, or dominance. And the last type of nonverbal communication, voice. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. When you speak, other people read your voice in addition to listening to your words. Things they pay attention to include your timing and pace, how loud you speak, your tone and inflection, and sounds that convey understanding, such as ah and uh-huh. Think about how your tone of voice can indicate sarcasm, anger, affection, or confidence. This is our final video, and it's from the TV show Friends. This video does a really good job in demonstrating the various types of nonverbal communication skills that we've just gone over. In addition, it will give us several examples of how using nonverbal communication ineffectively will redefine the message that it is we're trying to communicate.
Your job's a joke, you broke.
I'm pregnant. father, by the way, but you got it.
Your job's a joke, you broke. Your love life's the away.
You know I could get him to forgive us.
I don't know.
I'm telling you. I can do it.
Yeah, he can do it.
It's like you're always stuck in second gear.
He was like this crazy-eyed, hairy beast man. He was like a Bigfoot or a Yeti or something. Hi, just so you know, we didn't mean to fog you. We actually thought you were like a Yeti or something.
Hi.
So you like the short hair better?
What? Yeti? I'm Danny?
When it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year, but...
Phoebes? Hello? Phoebe?
I'll be there for you. When the rain starts to fall, I'll be there for you. Like I've been there before. I'll be there for you.
If you two are happy, then I'm happy for you. I'm fine.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm fine. Totally fine. I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
I'll be there for you. 'Cause you're there for me too.
Joe? Well, I guess Joey went home. Oh, and look, there is still one box that I have to unpack. Oh my God, you almost gave me a heart attack. Oh.
Still in bed at 10 and work again at 8.
My best friend and my sister. I cannot believe this.
I'm sorry, but it's true. I love him too.
My best friend and my sister. I cannot believe this.
You burned your breakfast so far, things are going great. Your mother warned you there'd be days like these. But you
Let's put aside the fact that you accidentally picked up my grandmother's ring and you accidentally proposed to Rachel.
When people do this, I don't really know what that means. I'm sorry.
And when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, even your year, I'll be there for you. When the rain starts to fall, I'll be there for you. Like I've been there before, I'll be there for you. 'Cause you're there for me too. I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. 'Cause you're there for me too.
Effective communication saves time, saves emotions, saves relationships, and in the fire service, saves lives. By attending today's training, you now have the basic skills to be a more effective communicator. I would like to thank you all for your time and for your attention, and I hope to see you soon.